Hello, beautiful humans. Welcome to the Midlife Revolution. I'm your host, Megan Connor, and tonight we're going to be digging into the curious case of the Adelson family. True Crime Tuesday here at the Midlife Revolution. And some of you may be asking, what in the world does the Midlife Revolution have to do with a true crime case? Well, I will just tell you that this channel studies everything at the intersection of narcissism, high demand religion, and true crime. And in exploring the different cases that are out there in the universe right now, there is no more difficult family dynamic case than the Adleson case. Since 2014, this case has been in the public eye, since before my family's case. I'm the cousin of Lori Vallow Daybell. I dig into all of the dynamics at the intersection of narcissism and high demand religion and true crime. And the Adleson case is one of those that caught my attention because there is such an unhealthy enmeshed family dynamic that happens in this scenario. So for those of you who don't know much about the Adleson case, let me give you a quick synopsis. So this case centers on the 2014 murder-for-hire plot that resulted in the death of Dan Markel. He was a prominent Florida State University law professor and legal scholar. Dan Markel was shot in his Tallahassee garage on July 18, 2014, and he died the following day. The crime stemmed from a contentious divorce and custody battle between Dan Markel and his ex-wife, Wendi Adleson, a fellow law professor. The Adelson family, particularly Wendy's brother Charlie Adelson and her mother Donna Adelson, allegedly orchestrated the killing to resolve the dispute in Wendy's favor of the custody of the couple's children. They allegedly orchestrated the killing so that Wendi could take the children down to Miami to be closer to her parents. Wendi never liked Tallahassee. She wanted to go down to Miami. She wanted to be closer to her mother and the dental practice of her brother. Investigators described the plot as a sophisticated operation involving a lot of intermediaries. Charlie Adelson reportedly hired his then-girlfriend, Catherine Magbanoa, who connected him to a hitman named Sigfredo Garcia, the father of her children. So, followed this around. It's a lot of names. Catherine and Sigfredo had children together. And then Catherine was also dating Charlie after Catherine and Sigfredo had parted ways. And Luis Rivera was a close friend and confidant of Sigfredo. The motive was rooted in the Adelsons' frustration with the court rulings that prevented Wendy's relocation to Miami and limited their access to their grandchildren. Prosecutors alleged that the family viewed Dan Markel as an obstacle, with email evidence showing Donna pressuring Wendi to coerce Dan Markel into allowing the move to Miami. 4 people have already been convicted, but Wendi and her father, Harvey Adleson, have been named as uncharged conspirators in the case. Donna Adelson is the family matriarch, and she is a bookkeeper at Charlie Adelson's successful South Florida dental practice. She's portrayed in court documents and media as deeply invested in and maintaining this facade of a loving, affluent, and close-knit Jewish family. She presented herself publicly as a devoted grandmother and supportive mother, often emphasizing family unity and success. However, evidence suggests this image was carefully curated to mask controlling and manipulative behaviors. Sound familiar? Wiretaps and testimonies reveal Donna's disparaging comments about Dan Markel, calling him, quote, terrible, and expressing hatred, which fueled the plot to have him eliminated. Her desire for a positive public image is evident in her distress over media scrutiny and the family's reputation. For instance, after Charlie's conviction, She was described as, quote, furious with the justice system and focused on portraying herself as an innocent, distraught parent. This aligns with analysis labeling her as a covert narcissist, where she prioritized the family's polished exterior while exerting control behind the scenes. Donna's manipulation of the children was a key flashpoint in this case. Dan Markel filed a motion in June 2014, weeks before his death, to prohibit Donna from unsupervised time with the boys, alleging she made disparaging remarks about him to them, such as telling the toddlers their father was, quote, mean or undeserving. This motion threatened Donna's access and image as the ideal grandmother. After the murder, Wendi quickly relocated to Miami. She changed the boys' last names from Markel to Adleson, claiming it was for safety amid media attention, and severed contact between the children and Dan Markel's parents for nearly a decade. These actions, allegedly influenced by Donna, erased Dan Markel's influence on their children's life, including dropping one child's middle name honoring Dan Markel's grandfather. The Markel family lobbied for Florida's, quote, Markel Act in 2023 to expand the grandparents' visitation rights, highlighting the Adelsons' control over the children's lives. The case exposes dark family dynamics, with prosecutors alleging Donna and Charlie financed the hit, paying $100,000, and used coded language in wiretaps referencing a, quote, TV as the murder plot to discuss it. Donna's role is seen as central, driven by her desperate desire for control over Wendi and the grandchildren. So here's the timeline of the case. It begins with the murder and it incorporates the religious upbringing disputes. Dan Markel was raised in a religious Jewish family in Toronto. He desired a more Orthodox Jewish upbringing for his sons, especially after visiting Israel, including kosher practices and cultural observance. When he studied in Israel, he then came back and insisted on a kosher wedding in 2006, but the Adelsons, who hosted the wedding, provided non-kosher food, signaling early tensions between the two families. Wendi, who is from a less observant family, refused to support this, prioritizing relocation to Miami over maintaining Orthodox traditions in Tallahassee. The custody battles highlighted these clashes, with Dan Markel opposing the move, partly to preserve the children's connection to his Jewish heritage. So on July 18th, Dan Markel was shot in his Tallahassee garage after dropping his sons at daycare. He unfortunately died the next day. The murder follows his 2014 motion to limit Donna Adelson's unsupervised access to the children due to her disparaging remarks about him. From 2014 to 2016, the investigations of law enforcement revealed this murder-for-hire link to the Adelsons via phone records, financial transactions, and wiretaps. Wendi relocated to Miami with the children, changed their last names to Adelson, and cut off contact with Dan Markel's parents. In May of 2016, Sigfredo Garcia and Luis Rivera were arrested for the shooting. Now, here's the connection. Catherine Magbanua was arrested as an intermediary. And we know that Dan Markel had been dating Catherine Magbanua. And we know that Catherine had a connection with Sigfredo Garcia because he was the father of her children. Rivera pled guilty to second-degree murder. He cooperated with law enforcement, and then he implicated Garcia and Magbanua. In October of 2019, Garcia was convicted of first-degree murder and conspiracy. Magbanua's first trial ended in a mistrial. It was 10 versus 2 for conviction. And we know that one of the jurors later commented that they couldn't stand sending the mother to prison when the father was already in prison, leaving their children essentially orphans. But in May 2022, Magbanua was retried and convicted of first-degree murder, conspiracy, and solicitation. Then in April of 2022, Charlie Adelson was arrested for first-degree murder, conspiracy, and solicitation. In November of 2023, Charlie was convicted. The evidence included wiretaps and testimony about the Adelsons' hatred of Dan Markel and their desire for Wendi to be able to relocate to Miami. Then in November of 2023, Donna Adelson was arrested at Miami International Airport with a one-way ticket to Vietnam. Just as a side note, there's no U.S. extradition treaty with Vietnam. However, she was charged with first-degree murder, conspiracy, and solicitation. In December of 2023, just the following month, Charlie was sentenced to life plus 60 years. In September of 2024, Donna's trial was delayed on the first day of jury selection due to her attorney's withdrawal over conflict of interest because he previously represented Charlie Adelson. Throughout 2024 and 2025, the pretrial motions have continued, including Donna's failed bid to recuse the judge and her request to redepose witnesses amid new wiretaps alleging plots to harm informants. Finally, the trial was rescheduled to this month, August of 2025. As of this date, the trial preparations have intensified with discussions about her potentially testifying, Donna Adelson. So far, no charges against Wendi or Harvey Adleson have been filed, though they remain named conspirators. So just to go over the convictions and the sentences that have been handed down so far, Luis Rivera pled guilty to second-degree murder in 2016. He was sentenced to 19 years, concurrent with another sentence he's serving. He's cooperated. He testified that he and Garcia were hired for $100,000, and he implicated Katie Magbanowa as the link to the Adelsons. Sigfredo Garcia was also convicted in October of 2019 of first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit murder. He was sentenced to life without parole plus 30 years. Catherine Magbanowa was convicted in May of 2022. She had a retrial again after that 2019 mistrial where one juror was the holdout there. She was convicted of first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and solicitation to commit murder. She was sentenced to life without parole plus 60 years, so she's serving 2 consecutive 30-year terms. And Charlie Adelson, he was convicted in November of 2023 of first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and solicitation to commit murder. He was sentenced to life without parole plus 60 years, so again, 30 years each for conspiracy and solicitation. So Donna Adelson's trial began today with jury selection in Leon County, Florida, before Judge Stephen Everett. She faces charges of first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and solicitation to commit murder, all carrying potential life sentences. Prosecutors allege she was the key architect, financing and planning the hit alongside Charlie to enable Wendi's relocation and unrestricted family access. The evidence against her includes wiretaps, coded discussions about a, quote, TV as the murder plot, with Charlie gifting a TV to his sister Wendi and saying, "I was going to hire a hitman, but I bought you this TV instead." There are financial records showing the Adelson family making payments to Katie Magbanowa post-murder and emails revealing Donna's pressure on Wendi to force Dan Markel's consent for her to relocate. Donna's arrest on November 13th of 2023 at the Miami airport before she boarded a flight to Vietnam with Harvey, her husband, demonstrates a consciousness of guilt. Prosecutors argue she was fleeing after Charlie's conviction. So the trial was originally scheduled for September of 2024, but it was delayed when her attorneys, who also represented Charlie, withdrew due to a conflict of interest. The recent developments include new wiretaps disclosed in April of this year, alleging that Donna and Harvey discussed harming witnesses like Robert Adleson, her estranged son, who has basically gone no contact with the family. as well as Catherine Magbanua and an informant's mother via jailhouse communications. Donna's defense sought to redepose witnesses, claiming that the prior interviews were tainted, but prosecutors opposed it as redundant. She also unsuccessfully appealed to recuse Judge Everett over alleged ex parte communications. Does this sound familiar, trying to recuse a judge because they don't rule in your favor? Donna has pleaded not guilty, and she may testify. This is really a high-risk move. It could either humanize her as a, quote, loving mom and grandmother, or it could expose her inconsistencies between what was recorded and what she's going to testify to at trial. Her attorney, Dan Roshbaum, portrays her as oblivious to any plot, believing that Charlie was extorted rather than involved. Pre-trial hearings this month have focused on evidence admissibility, and jury selection started today. And for those who are particularly interested in the narcissism angle of this case, Donna exemplifies covert narcissism and definitely narcissistic rage. Analysts describe her as manipulative, using emotional control to maintain family dominance while projecting a benevolent image. The little-known details include her disparaging Dan Markel in her emails and also phone calls as a barrier to family happiness, fueling rage when her grandmother role was threatened. There are lots of Reddit discussions out there highlighting her, quote, performance in interrogations, trying to put on a good face in public, implying that she implicated others to save herself, which is a classic narcissistic trait. But the wiretaps show her mocking the jury after Charlie's trial, revealing her sense of entitlement. Experts note that the family's narcissistic family traits were threats to idealize themselves and their self-image, trigger extreme actions. And I just can't believe that their solution to solving this family problem was literally getting rid of the father who was blocking the family's access to the children. It's just beyond rational. There are a lot of podcasts out there and other YouTube channels who are analyzing Donna Adelson basically as living in a disconnected narrative, prioritizing her ego over the consequences of her actions. If she's convicted, this could really underscore how narcissism erodes empathy and dehumanizing the person that you're up against. And we've literally watched this family implode in public. So I wanted to give you a little bit of a synopsis of the case before we really dig into what happened today in court. And there is definitely the archetype of the devouring mother embodied in Donna Adelson, this idea of the enmeshed family system where the people in the family don't have their own identity, but they are controlled by the family ruler, who I would argue is Donna Adelson. And then we have Harvey, her husband, as the enabler in this situation. And in my opinion, enablers are just as bad, if not worse, than the person controlling the family system, because their silence gives tacit approval to what the controller of the family system is perpetrating on everyone else. So in an enmeshed family system, it's almost impossible for people to have their own identity or to make their own choices or decisions. And I think it's fairly apparent in this case that Donna Adelson was pulling the strings of every single one of her children. Now, I'm grateful to hear that one of them has gone no contact and has escaped that family system. But it certainly seems like Charlie, who was kind of the family scapegoat, the family screw up, the one who could never do anything right, he was the one that got saddled with all of the charges in this case. And if you listen to the jailhouse phone calls between Charlie and Donna, she has a lot of quote unquote sympathy for him, but she basically tells him to suck it up, to not show emotion, and that he just needs to get through it. Well, now that Donna has been arrested and charged and is facing a trial, her tune has changed just a little bit. And now she's all about protecting herself with very little compassion for her son, Charlie, and certain none for Wendi, who has now become the family scapegoat. It's really interesting to see how the family roles change as circumstances change. So I agree with you, Crash, that Robert is the smart one for leaving the family. It is always that person that leaves the family system that things get blamed on. And now he's going to become the family scapegoat rather than Charlie. So there are definitely a couple of videos that I want to show to you. I think what is important to watch is Donna's arrest. And then I want to talk a little bit about jury selection today. So before we go to the arrest video, I first want to go to the judge reading the charges against Donna Adelson, just so we understand exactly what is happening here in this case. And thanks everybody for being here. Thanks for your support. Please take a second to like the episode and share it with people who you know want to hear this information today.
I'm going to read to you at this time a statement of the case that has been agreed upon by the parties. On July 18th, 2014, FSU College of Law professor Dan Markel was shot while seated in his car. This happened in the driveway of Markel's home on Trescott Drive in the Benton Hills neighborhood. The killers traveled to Tallahassee from Miami to commit the murder in a rented silver green color Prius. The defendant and alleged conspirator in this murder was the former mother-in-law of Dan Markel. She has entered a plea of not guilty. The statement of the case that I have just read to you is not evidence, and it's not to be considered by you as evidence or any proof of guilt. You must not be influenced by this statement. It is merely informing you of the accusation that has been made by the state against the defendant. Before we speak with you individually and privately about this case, some of you may be excused. Mr. Zellman, you can take it. I'm also going to read to you at this time the material part of the indictment that has been filed against the defendant. Once again, the indictment is not evidence, and it's not to be considered as evidence or any proof of guilt. You must not be influenced by the fact that an indictment has been filed in this case. It is merely a formal method by which the state makes an accusation against the defendant. It is alleged in count one that on or about July 18, 2014, Donna S. Adelson in the county, Leon, and state of Florida did unlawfully kill a human being, Daniel Markel, by shooting with a firearm, and the killing was perpetrated from or with a premeditated design or intent to effect the death of Daniel Markel, contrary to the Florida statutes. Count two. Beginning in 2013 and until October 1st of 2016, Donna S. Adelson in the county of Leon and state of Florida did agree, conspire, combine, or confederate with Charles Adleson and or Catherine McBanois and or other persons to commit first-degree murder, contrary to the Florida statutes. Count three. It is alleged that beginning in 2013 and until October 1st of 2016, Donna S. Adelson in the county of Leon and state of Florida did solicit another to commit first-degree murder, and in the course of such solicitation, commanded, encouraged, hired, or requested the person, Charles Adelson and or Catherine McBanawa, and or other persons to engage in specific conduct which would constitute first-degree murder, which resulted in the death of Daniel Markel, contrary to the Florida statutes. I believe I said this before, but we are now going to speak with each of you individually and privately about this matter. Some of you may be excused during this process. The rest of you will remain to participate in the next phase of the jury selection process. Individual voir dire is time consuming, but will go a lot smoother if you are prepared to tell us what we need to know. The basic questions that you will be asked are the following. Number one, what do you know about this case? Number two, what sources have you obtained this knowledge from? Number three, based on what you know, do you have an opinion about Mrs. Adelson's guilt or innocence? Number four, can you set aside your present knowledge, disregard it, and render a verdict solely on the evidence presented in the courtroom? Can you be fair and impartial? Number five, do you have any reason that you cannot serve on this jury for potentially up to 3 weeks? It will save us all a lot of time if you think about these 5 questions and you are prepared to give a prompt answer when you are called back.
Why did Amazon send me $20,000? Because
Sorry, apologies for the commercial, you guys. So what I want to go to now is this article, and I always want to show, I want to highlight that Dan Markel, he's in the center here, a former Florida law professor at the time of his death. And that's Donna on the left and Charlie Adelson on the right there, who's already been convicted. And so I want to highlight the fact that this entire case happened over a custody dispute. You know, Wendi Adleson, sorry, I was not sharing my screen, guys. Wendi Adleson wanted to divorce Dan Markel. And Dan, who had visited Israel, was, you know, heading towards a more Orthodox Jewish life. And Wendi was completely unsupportive of this, even though it really would have had no negative impact on her children whatsoever. And really, the main issue was that, you know, Dan had taken this job in Tallahassee as a law professor, and Wendi was resentful of that. She didn't like being in Tallahassee. She wanted to be in Miami, where she felt a little more comfortable, where her parents were living. And, you know, Tallahassee is a little bit more of a rural community. Miami is really more about flashing the cash. It's a very showy place to live. People driving very expensive cars and living in expensive homes. And I think that's the lifestyle that Wendi wanted. But that's not what Dan Markel wanted. And so he essentially blocked Wendi from taking the children down to Miami to be closer to their grandparents. Dan also was trying to teach his children a more Orthodox Jewish life, which is where sort of the high demand religion portion of this comes in. Not that there is anything wrong with Orthodox Judaism, but Wendi was wholly against this, and she would not support Dan in having her children eat kosher foods and do the things that were more in alignment with Orthodox Judaism. So Dan was very successful in family court in Tallahassee in getting Wendi blocked from taking the children to Miami. And it just, I don't know, it sets off a red flag. It sets off a lot of fireworks in my mind when one parent wants to do something that is not harmful to the children and the other parent just absolutely implodes over it and refuses to allow it to happen. I've seen it so many times, not only in my own divorce, but in the divorces of those who are super close to me. And this is just one of those situations that just hits close to home because Dan Markel wanted to do what was best for his sons. And it appears as though allegedly Wendi Adleson wanted to do what was best for her. And she didn't really care about what was right for her kids. Now, I can imagine a scenario in which Wendi went to her mother, the matriarch of this enmeshed family system, and complained about Dan. And Wendi orchestrated this plot with her son, Charlie. So Wendi was the accountant and bookkeeper for Charlie Adelson's dental practice. And she got caught paying off Catherine Magbanua to basically hire her former lover, I guess, father of her children, to do this hit on Dan Markel. And it just is a situation where Donna Adelson had already been involved extensively in orchestrating who her daughter was dating, who she was going to marry. She really had a lot of influence over her children, and she was just the orchestrator of all of these harmful dynamics. And I agree with this, Melly Mel. Donna did not want anyone influencing her daughter and her grandkids except for her. And I think that's probably true. And that's kind of why we are here at this time. So I want to play one more video for you guys here. And this is something that hotly debated, is this testimony over a jailhouse snitch who could potentially testify at trial. And that's kind of what the conflict has been over up until today.
Donna Adelson, the Florida grandmother accused of hatching a plot to murder her ex-son-in-law, is going to trial after a false start last year. I take a look at everything that's been happening in Donna Adelson's case and why she doesn't want jailhouse snitches testifying against her.
So just to pause here, we are using this video in accordance with YouTube's fair use policy for commentary and public interest.
Welcome to Crime Fix. I'm Anjanette Levy. Donna Adelson's trial is happening. Jury selection is underway in Tallahassee, and the wealthy grandmother from Miami is in for the fight of her life.
Oh, goodness. I'm so sorry for the ridiculous ad.
But he always wanted to go to Harvard, Yale, or Princeton. And he went to Harvard undergrad. And later on, he went and he took a year off and he went to Cambridge, England. And 1 year he studied also in Israel. And then he came back, he did Harvard Law School, and then he clerked. And then he worked in Washington. So that was his first job. But of all his accomplishments, the thing I'm the most proudest of, he was a great father. And he always attended his children's day center and would go there early in the morning and have
Donna on the street.
Okay, so I just want to comment. Obviously, Dan was a great father. He was wonderful. And then what is probably the most controversial part of this entire case is what people are referring to as the bump, where undercover FBI agents approached Donna on the street, handed her a piece of paper that was, it was a copy of the article around the arrest of the people who actually pulled the trigger on this crime, and the number of somebody that she could call, as well as basically an extortion for money for her to pay, for Donna to pay these people to keep them quiet. They referred to it as the bump. And this is one of those times when the lines had gone quiet. They weren't really sure how they could get these people charged. And so they decided to sort of incite more discussion by having federal agents contact Donna on the street, refer to the crime in a surreptitious way, and get her and Charlie talking about what actually happened. Here's video of that incident.
Excuse me, Mrs. Adleson? How you doing? Just want to give you this. Listen. No, don't be scared. Listen, just want to let you know that we know that your family has been taking care of Katie and her friend Ludo for quite some time after your problem up north has been resolved. And I want to let you know that my brother, he's incarcerated. He helped your family with this problem you guys had up north. And we want to make sure that he's going through some rough times. We want to make sure that you take care of what he's going through, the way you're taking care of Katie and Tudo. Well, this will explain it. Thank you.
After the bump, police listened as Donna and Charlie spoke in code on wiretapped phone calls. Charlie took the stand at his trial, and he claimed that they were actually discussing a double extortion plot and that Katie Magbanua was extorting him because she was being extorted by Rivera and Garcia.
I want to go through some of that. You claim that you were extorted on July 18th, 2014 by Catherine Magbanua and also in the background, some Latin kings, probably Garcia and Rivera, right? Is that accurate?
No, I wasn't extorted by Catherine Magbanua.
You weren't?
That's not what I believed in 2014.
Okay, I'm sorry. I understood you to say you believe that today.
Today I do, yes.
All right, so who extorted you?
I believe that it was Catherine Magbanua's friend that she ran her mouth to.
There was also a recording at the Dolce Vita restaurant where Katie Magbanua and Charlie Adelson discussed the man in the bump who claimed to be a friend of Rivera's approaching Donna Adelson. In the end, the jury did not believe Charlie Adelson.
In the Circuit Court of the Second Judicial Circuit in and for Leon County, Florida, the state of Florida versus Charles Adelson, case number 2016 CF 3036B, verdict. Count 1. We, the jury, find as follows as to count 1 of the indictment, first-degree murder. The defendant is guilty of first-degree murder.
Jail.
Now you can obviously see in that video how devastated Charlie is at being convicted in this case. I don't think that he ever believed that he was really going to receive any kind of a punishment for what he did. Probably just because of a sense of entitlement. Now, part of the issue that I have, that this family is obviously an enmeshed family system. We obviously have Donna pulling the strings. Charlie, who had previously been seen as the family screw-up, kind of the scapegoat of this family, he's the one who ends up taking the first fall for the family. The co-conspirators were convicted first. His girlfriend, former girlfriend, Katie Magbanua, hung jury in the first case, and then she was convicted. But also the two men who actually were there the day that Dan Markel was murdered, the one who pulled the trigger and the one who was the ride-along in the car seat next to him. Those two were also convicted, but one of them pled guilty, smartly, I think, because he avoided a trial and got a lesser sentence for that guilty plea. Now, the almost ridiculous connection with all of this is listening to Charlie complain about his incarceration, complain about his conviction, complain about being thrown into isolation in solitary confinement, and his mother trying to appease him and saying, just don't cry, just hold on for a little while, and we're doing a lot of things to try and get you well taken care of. Meanwhile, the two of them have started throwing Wendi under the bus. Wendi testifying in the trials, being granted use immunity, meaning that in the actual trial, the things that she has said cannot be used against her. However, if the prosecution comes up with additional evidence that she is guilty of conspiring with all of these people, she still can be charged. And that's the big question in this case. Will Wendi eventually be charged? Legal experts seem to think that she's not going to be arrested during this trial of Donna that's going on, but they haven't ruled out the fact that she may still be charged. So right now, today, the focus is in Tallahassee. The focus is on Donna's trial, and jury selection is going on. And as we've seen in high-profile trials before, it's not likely that you're going to find an entire panel of juries that has never heard of the case. In fact, a lot of people have heard of the case, but the judge is taking people aside and questioning them. Can you remain unbiased, even though you've heard the name of the defendant? You've heard maybe some facts of the case. You've maybe even formed an opinion, but can you set that opinion aside and remain unbiased until you hear all of the evidence that's presented against her? So today in court, we've seen Donna Adelson showing up not in her typical orange jumpsuit, but wearing street clothes, also wearing her hair down, portraying herself as sort of the aging grandmother who could not have possibly been involved in anything illicit or any kind of conspiracy, and trying to portray herself as just a sweet little old granny. But I hope that the jurors will see through this. I hope that they will see that Donna is actually the mastermind of this entire thing. Donna cares more about appearances than she does about anything else. Does this remind you of a family that we've heard of recently in the news? Lori Vallow Daybell's family cared a lot about appearances, and they were willing to do a lot to keep those appearances, to lie to law enforcement, and to allow Lori to carry out her actions with her brother Alex. I believe that Donna Adelson is very much the same type of narcissistic mother, controlling the family system, using her husband as an enabler to subvert everything and make sure that it gets whitewashed and swept under the rug. The difficulty in this case is Wendi. And what I'm going to deep dive into tomorrow, watch for the video, is all of the different testimonies that Wendi has gone through. We're going to analyze those together. We're going to hear what she has to say. We're going to listen to the things that she has changed and the things that have stayed the same across her different testimonies. She has been subpoenaed in this case. Will she testify here as well? There is a lot to look forward to and to unpack in this enmeshed family system. But for my part, there is nothing closer to the intersection of narcissism, true crime, and high demand religion than this case where a dad wanted his kids to practice more Orthodox Judaism and stay in Tallahassee when his former wife wanted the kids to not practice anything close to that and to move to Miami to be closer to her parents. Ultimately, I believe, in my opinion, allegedly, that it was Donna who ultimately decided that she wanted the kids closer to her. She wanted Wendi closer to her. Wendi hated Tallahassee, and we're also going to dig into her terrible book that she wrote that was quote-unquote fiction, but mirrored her life so closely that nobody can ignore the connection to her real life. It wasn't actually fiction, I believe, allegedly. It was how she really felt about this entire situation. There is so much to unpack in this case, and I know I'm really far behind because I was kind of dealing with my own family's case. 2016, this has been a really long time coming for the Markel family to finally see justice. Now, obviously, there have been some convictions already, but to see the mastermind, the puppet string puller, Donna Adelson, finally on trial, has to be really satisfying for the Markel family. And I hope that we will find justice again with Donna being convicted. And I have to hope in my optimistic mind that Wendi gets charged too, because I don't believe she's innocent, allegedly. I believe she was really at the heart of all of this, but she was one of the people who was a little bit smarter than everybody else. There's not as much phone data records. She didn't put things in writing. Her cell phone wasn't tapped because she wasn't the type to say things out loud about what was really going on. So I really think that at the heart of this, that Wendi was really behind all of it, and that Donna helped her pull the strings, allegedly. Just going to say. So we have a lot to still dig into in this case. I realize I'm a little bit behind, and don't worry, we're going to uncover all of it, starting with tomorrow, unpacking all of the testimonies of Wendi Adelson and following again the jury selection in this case, where we've heard a lot of jurors already say that they knew about the case, but they could remain impartial. We'll see if those juries remain impaneled in this case or if they get dismissed. Thank you for joining me. We'll be back again tomorrow with more on this Adelson family case. And I can't imagine a better way to think about this case than applying the template of my family, the Lori Vallow Daybell case, where there was this huge intersection of narcissism and true crime and high demand religion. We're seeing it all over again. Although this case started long before my family's case, it has stretched out much longer. There have been more convictions, and I'm really interested to dig into the dynamics of how Donna played a role in this case. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for your support and your super stickers. Please take a second to subscribe to the channel. It's the best free way to support the channel. And I will see you again very soon. Tomorrow, in fact, as we unpack more about the Adelson family and this enmeshed family.